Here, if folks would find their seats, please. Okay, Travis, are we live? All right, great. Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Assembly Housing and Homeless Committee. It is Wednesday, August 21st at 11 a.m. Let's first just go around for those here and do a roll call. Would you like to start, Ms. Braga?
Karen Bronga.
Anna Brawley.
Randy Solt.
Cameron Perez-Verdia.
Mike Braniff.
Can you say from where? Because
Parks and Recreation.
thanks.
Judge Rollet, Anchorage Health Department.
Thanks.
Chase Burgrave, Anchorage Health Department.
Thanks. And Assembly members on the phone, just confirm you're there. Mr. Myers, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Cameron.
Mr. Rivera, are you there?
Present.
Mr. Martinez, are you there?
Present, thank you.
Okay, thanks, great. So just as a reminder for members, if you want to get in the queue, if you could send me a text, that would be helpful. Also, members on the phone, use text as a way to put yourself in the queue. We've got a pretty full agenda today, so we're going to try to be as efficient with the time as we can. My co-chair, do you have anything you want to say before we start?
Nope. Let's try to be as efficient as possible. And we have a lot of speakers that would like to speak. So thank you.
Great, thanks. So can we have Jessica Parks? Are you here from the coalition? Jessica, you want to come up? I think you're up first. And so I think we had said this last time in our meeting. We're really trying to develop an agenda that is fairly routine, where we have where we're plan driven, where we're talking about the plans that are really leading this work. We're looking at metrics and milestones, and so we really have an understanding of what's happening. And so we're continuing to work on what those agenda items and what that framework will be. But I think clearly the Anchored Home Plan and the coalition is an important part of that. So if you'd like to start just giving us an update on where we are on the items on our agenda. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't have a presentation for you today, but I did just want to talk a little bit about what's happened in the past month, where we're at, and where we're going. So the Anchored Home Plan update that happened last month, that's an update that will happen twice a year. So you'll see us back again talking about the Anchored Home updates in late January, early February of next year to talk about the progress made in the second 6 months of 2024. But I did just want to call attention to and talk a little bit about data and dashboards. So on our website, there is an Anchored Home dashboard, which has all of the information from the presentation last month, as well as some fun little graphs to follow some of that. But what the coalition does track on a monthly basis is the data that is on both our Built for Zero dashboard and then our coalition data snapshot page. So our data snapshot page tracks the number of people experiencing homelessness as reflected in our homeless management and information system. So it tracks that number month over month, and then also tracks our numbers related to inflow and outflow. So inflow are people who are either new to our homeless prevention and response system in that month, or they have what we call returned from inactivity, which means they went for a period of time of 90 days or longer where they didn't interact with any systems, any shelter system, our coordinated entry system, a housing system, the navigation center, any of that. So they get dropped off as inactive. So if they come back into our system, they will get counted as new inflow at that point. And then on the other side, our outflow is the exact opposite of that. So that's people leaving our system either to housing, to some type of institutional care, hospitalization, or due to inactivity. So our outflow and our inflow numbers are tracked separately. I am happy to report that this last month, July, we did now see an 8th month of our outflow exceeding our inflow, and the number of people experiencing homelessness is now below 3,000 people. It has not been below 3,000 people since January of 2023, so that is a really exciting milestone to have reached. And then also on our data snapshot, we track some demographic information. So every month we look at the people who are in HMIS and experiencing homelessness in Anchorage, and we look at their racial demographics and we compare that to our census numbers. So we can track the overrepresentation that exists in our system. And as we know, that overrepresentation exists with people who are Alaska Native and American Indian, people who are Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian, and then people who are Black. So those three demographics continue to be overrepresented in our system, but we do track that month over month to see if we are seeing improvements or fluctuations in that number. And then the last number that I'll call attention to that's part of our data snapshot is our exits. So when we look at our exits, we only know as much as gets recorded in the system. So if somebody leaves a shelter, for example, and they might say, you know, I'm going out for a smoke, and then they leave and then they never come back. So we don't really know where they went. So their exit will be to an unknown destination at that point. And if they don't come back within 90 days, as I said, they'll drop off due to inactivity. So what we do track are the people that we do know where they went and they exited the system to a permanent destination. Was it to housing? Was it to an institutional care situation, or was it to some other type of situation? And that is a graph that is on our dashboard month over month as well to look at that. And I am happy to say a large percentage of our known exits are to housing. So when someone does go to a permanent destination, overwhelmingly it's to a housing destination, not to institutional care or death or anything like that.
Thanks. We weren't ready this time, but I think in the future, what I'd like to see is with Travis's help is show that,
Yep.
show both of those databases. I'll say the database of record, the single source of truth. So we're all referencing the same sets of data. Right or wrong, that's the data we're going to reference. If it's wrong, we'll work to update it. I know that the updates come from providers, so it's not all in your control, but you know, as part of holding the purse strings, that's a requirement that you put that information in there. So we're all trying to make more database decisions. We're all aware of where the data's at. We know where to go look at it. We can see if we're making progress. So I think hopefully next time we'll be ready to just pull it up and we'll just walk through it briefly just to get familiarized.
Absolutely.
Do you have a question? Thanks. So I'm looking at the page now, and this is actually really, for those of you who are listening who haven't been to this page, it's the Anchorage Coalition to End Homeless or aceh.org/data. And it does help to see the inflow and outflow graphic there. I do have a question about the services used. Can you speak to that a little bit in terms of are those, so it has things like permanent supportive housing, street outreach, emergency shelter. How is that data collected? Is that collected in the how is that data collected? I guess is the best.
Absolutely. So services provided is a number that is all of the people who accessed any type of service in that particular month. So maybe someone stayed at a shelter for a week, and then they encountered street outreach, being outdoors, and then they went down to the navigation center, and then maybe they were housed. So they would have 4 different services for that one person. So what we do in that graph is we look at all of the services that were provided. So it's duplicated, all of the services, and then we break them up by percentage to show of the people who are accessing services and of the services that are being provided in our system, how many of them are each individual type. So it was intended to really highlight that we do focus a lot on emergency shelter and that is a response within our homeless prevention and response system, but it's not all of it. People are accessing many, many other services in that system and getting housed, moving on to different solutions that are outside of the emergency shelter as well.
Thanks. Ms. Brawley?
Yeah, thanks. So I have heard anecdotally from several people, especially those who are in the mutual aid space, that evictions are up or just that more people are losing housing. I wonder if that's your guys' experience or if we have hard data on that. I know there's been folks tracking evictions or almost evictions, right? So I guess I'm hearing in the community that is a growing problem, and it's something that worries me, and I wonder if that's something that is showing up in the data.
Yeah, we are. That is something that we see. I do get a report every week of all of the FED filings. So I'm aware of what evictions could be upcoming. I do want to point out, we do have a really great program with United Way that's the eviction diversion program. And so oftentimes they're able to intervene once that eviction is filed to help that person either figure out a way they can stay in their existing home or move to something more affordable. So we do practice a lot of diversion. We are seeing a lot more calls of people who are facing eviction, not necessarily have been evicted yet. But in terms of entries to homelessness, yes. And we have seen family homelessness increasing as well. And that is where a lot of those evictions would come into play, is with those larger families.
Yes, Ms. Braga.
Excuse me. So I was wondering, the permanent supported housing, do you have data like at the point how many are, without giving away any private information, how many have engaged in counseling, work training, what kind of moving to the next level they're doing?
That would be, through the chair to Ms. Bronga, that would be through the providers themselves. Those are not outcomes that are necessarily tracked by the coalition or by HUD. We do have a system performance measure around increases in income, and that can be earned and unearned income, and it can be cash and non-cash benefits. So that is something that we do report year over year, the number of people who report in their annual assessment an increase in their income. So that is a number that we do have and track, but in terms of the individual services, each program provides different services, so they would be able to report for their services who was participating in them.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think that's all the questions we have. Thanks so much for being here today. Appreciate the report. Okay, and moving on, and again, as an effort to look at the plans that are in place, we recently, the Assembly recently approved the Housing and Community Development Annual Action Plan. And so we wanted to have you come and just briefly explain what that plan is and how it relates to the work of this committee. And I think part of the question is this a plan and a set of metrics that we should be looking at on a regular basis on this committee as another way of tracking progress in our city? So if you could introduce yourselves for the record, and then you can start.
Thank you. Jed Drolet, Anchorage Health Department. I'm Community Systems Program Manager. I oversee our HUD grants that we get as an entitlement community. I have my colleague here, Chase Burgrave, who is our senior or lead neighborhood planner, who is transitioning to take over a lot of the planning work that I've been doing the past year or so. So I don't have a formal presentation here. I did give one at the Assembly work session on August 9th that went over the 2024 action plan. I have a couple copies of that here in case there's questions that come up. But if you look back at the recording of that will have a lot of information about the details of the 2024 action plan. I'm just going to give a brief overview here of our planning process, what our plans are, and how they fit with some of these other efforts that we've talked about. So we are an entitlement community for HUD funding under 3 programs: Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, that's our best known program, Home Investment Partnerships Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants, or ESG. Due to our size and other factors, we are an entitlement community that gets a formula allocation each year for each of those grants. We have to submit an action plan each year to HUD to outline what we are proposing to do with that funding each year. As long as we submit that and meet all the requirements, we automatically get the funding. It's not a competitive process. Our projects, we do have to be eligible for the funding program requirements. And so there is some review on that. But we do get the money automatically each year, provided we jump through all the hoops. We are required to do every 3 to 5 years what's called a consolidated plan, which is a larger, big picture kind of strategic plan about what our priority needs are and what our goals are that we're going to be trying to address with the funding that we get each year. In terms of the interest of the committee, part of what that plan sets is the metrics that we're going to be using to evaluate success along each of those goals. And then each year we do an action plan. So the most recent con plan we did was last year. It was 2023 for 5 years, so 2023 through 2027. And then each year we do our action plan where we set out what specific projects we're going to be doing to meet those goals. And, each project is identified with a specific goal. This is, if it's housing, this is this project is going to create new housing. If it's homelessness, this is going to address the homelessness in one way or another. Other community development needs, not just housing and homelessness, although that is a lot of what we focus on. And then each year we do what's called a CAPER, Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, where we report to HUD on what we did with their funding that year and what progress we made toward meeting those goals. And so those metrics they're entered into the con plan. In the action plan, we say which goals we're trying to meet with that year's funding. And then each year in the CAPER, we report how we did. And that includes the specific metrics that we've set and our progress toward meeting the goals that were set in the con plan. So in theory, it's all within a single system that HUD maintains that we upload data into about both our spending and then also our outcomes, demographics of beneficiaries of the different projects and programs, depending on the type of project, what that might be, low and moderate income families, it might be types of housing units. There's various different types of outcome measurements, but that's all being tracked on an annual basis. So we don't necessarily have month-to-month data on the outcomes of our projects. A lot of our projects are larger, like construction type projects, and so they may take a few years to be complete. Or they may be a portion of a larger project that, we're only funding a certain part, maybe the acquisition of land, but then someone's going to build something, might take a few years until we have outcomes. And so we are operating generally on a pretty long time horizon compared to some other planning efforts. It's a multi-year process basically. But it is an integrated process of planning, setting goals, and then measuring progress to those goals. We publish it all publicly, and we have public review periods for each step in this process. And then also when we amend our plan, which we often do for various reasons, projects might not move forward and we need to reallocate funding, or in some cases, due to the deadlines that we have to meet to submit things to HUD, we may have identified a type of project we would like to do, but we don't have a specific project lined up yet. We can go out and select a project or find one, and then we'll go back and do a substantial amendment to the plan. We actually have a series of substantial amendments to reallocate a large portion of our past year's funding that was published today, went out in the Anchorage Daily News, and those documents are posted on our website. I would like to thank Jessica from the coalition who notified me this morning that there was a problem with the links to those documents on our website, but that has been fixed. And so you should be able to access those substantial amendments to the action plans that we amended through this process. 30-day public comment period, and then there will be a public hearing on September 5th. That's going to be at the Lusac Library, Wilda Marston Theater at 6 p.m. We're starting to do our public hearings there in the evenings to try to get more public engagement than we typically have gotten in the past when we've done them during the day at our office, which is not a way that people are often able to access our hearings. So we will also be using that hearing as the first hearing for putting together the 2025 action plan. And so we're trying to move toward a process where we're doing more of the work in advance and coming up with projects through a more formalized process and more extensive review opportunities before we get to the point where we're bumping up against deadlines. So part of our citizen participation plan is that before we draft each year's action plan, we do a public hearing and public comment period to gather ideas and suggestions from the public about what types of projects we might fund that year. We have typically not gotten any. Most times we've done that in recent years. And so we're trying to move toward a process where we do a request for grant proposals and get some kind of formal project proposals in that we can evaluate and score, and we can do public outreach as part of that process. We're not quite at the point where we have that in place yet, but we are moving toward that. And so while we were doing these substantial amendments for past year's funding, we decided to go ahead and start the process for 2025. So we'll also use that hearing and public comment period as an opportunity to get ideas for projects we might fund. Types of projects we fund: community development and housing and services. Basically, we do a lot of new housing development. Home program is pretty much entirely focused on housing issues and development. So we typically have contributed a portion of new housing with Cook Inlet Housing Authority and other housing providers. Requirements for affordability, it's not market rate housing that we do. We do the affordable housing end of the spectrum. Community development block grant can't do construction of new housing. There are certain aspects of housing projects it can contribute towards, such as acquisition of land. One of the projects we're putting funding toward in the substantial amendments we're proposing with Cook Inlet is to acquire land for housing development. But it also meets other needs. There's a carve out for public services that we typically do a lot of, provides a lot of case management, outreach, and things like that. And then emergency solutions grant is pretty much focused on homelessness, and it was originally called an emergency shelter grant. They've broadened it somewhat, but still pretty focused on homeless services. We have devoted a lot of that funding in recent years to the homelessness prevention program through the Aging Disability Resource Center, which is part of the health department. That is now back up and running. We took a little time to get the next year's funding in place, but if people are at risk of eviction, they can call 211 and get routed through that system. And if they qualify for the program, they'll be directed to ADRC for that. That's kind of an overview of where we're at. We're kind of moving toward a more formalized process where we're doing more work in advance. We are kind of working through a backlog of funding and processes and turnover where we're not quite at the point where we've got the new system in place fully, but we're moving toward it and implementing some of those steps at this point. So that's a kind of where I'll end for now, and I'll entertain any questions.
Sure, Ms. Braga.
Thanks. So I think it's a different agency, but the Brownfield Cleanup, okay.
No, that's EPA. We're not involved in that.
Okay, sounds good, thanks. And then mobile homes, I continue to.
Yes, we mobile home repair program is a longstanding program we've done with CDBG. We are in the final stages of the process of selecting a new operator for that program, and so we hope to announce that very soon. That is a program that we use to do what they're called minor repairs, but it's up to $20,000 per mobile home, which can be pretty significant. So, roof replacements, furnaces, things like that. Once we have that up and running with the new operator, there'll be an application process for that as well.
Thanks. Did you have a comment? Sure. I just want to sort of try my best to summarize. And partly it's that the data that you would produce wouldn't be something that you would necessarily be able to come to us monthly and give us updates on. That sounds like that's true. The other piece that I'm curious about, and it may be the administration that actually needs to answer this question, is your comment around integration, and I would say also alignment. The alignment between the choices and the work that you're doing and the anchored home plan and the alcohol tax plan that we've just sort of started to roll out, and how we're aligning the choices that we're making through this plan and others. And so that may be an administrative conversation, but to your understanding, is there alignment at this point? Is there an active conversation among the other efforts that are happening and how we are utilizing these funds in moving forward the priorities that we've established as a community or as a city?
Thank you. Great question. Yeah, I would say active conversations, yes, definitely. There has been kind of a larger conversation about alignment, braiding of funding, trying to coordinate our different processes. We're not quite there yet, frankly, I would say, but we have been having those conversations with the coalition about continuum of care. with our sister program at the Health Department, Housing Homeless Services, which manages their portion of the alcohol tax. Chase actually just met with them the other day to kind of talk about how we might coordinate with their process. Because yes, there is a lot of overlap in the types of projects and programs that can be funded with some of these different types of funding. And there could be better coordination of that so that we are kind of, I think we're, conceptually all kind of pulling in the same direction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have a level of coordination at a granular level that would be optimal. So we're working on it.
Thanks. Do you have a comment before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those listening in, we recognize that there's a lot of plans out there. So a future meeting, we want to have a framework of the key and relevant plans, what their scope is, purpose, and who the owner is, to make it clear for us as well as everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to our next item, and that is the administration is going to come up. I think, Farina, if you'd like to come up, and Katie, I don't know if you're going to come up too, or just have her do it. And Mike, you're here too. All right. So before we jump into your report, this is your first appearance at our committee. Welcome. We'd love for you to just take a few minutes to introduce yourself, share a little bit about who you are and your background, and then have you jump right into your presentation.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for having me. My name is Fina Brown, and I am the Special Assistant to the Mayor on Homelessness and Health. Prior to stepping into this role, I did a brief stint with the Rasmussen Foundation, and my portfolio included homelessness, behavioral health, as well as childcare. Prior to working for the Rasmussen Foundation, I was a Deputy Director for the Division of Behavioral Health for 4 years. And prior to that, I have somewhere around almost 20 years of behavioral health experience, from working in Texas, Florida, Virginia, and here in Alaska, where I've been for the last 14 years. I know it's hard to believe 20 years because I'm only 22, so it's a tough one. I really appreciate being here and having the opportunity to work with such a wonderful team and an administration that recognizes that we are stepping into a challenge that didn't just happen overnight. So I want to start with kind of our approach to how we are going to address this work. And I will lean back because I think I'm getting really loud in the mic. Our approach includes exploring a variety of solutions, recognizing that housing is a long-term solution. I want to emphasize that in that we are addressing kind of the immediate crisis with establishing a year-round shelter, ensuring that we have an emergency cold weather shelter plan in place before winter. But the ultimate goal of all of the work that we do is working with our partners, working with shelter providers, non-congregate, and anyone in this capacity is recognizing that the goal is truly housing and how we get there through a variety of different solutions. We're also emphasizing the importance of a year-round shelter. We know that there is a dearth of housing that's available, so ensuring that we have immediate solutions while we work on building and creating more flow in the system for people to move through is critical to ensure that we create real solutions that solve problems. We're concentrating right now on long-term planning and ensuring that we have consistent and reliable shelter system. I am incredibly grateful that I get to step into this position with a lot of foundation. The health department has an incredible team of people that were there and continue to be there. We already have the request for proposals out for the congregate shelter as well as the non-congregate shelter. Those close on August 30th, and that's critical in ensuring that we have predictable and consistent shelter options for the individuals that we're serving and for our partners that will make referrals. One thing that we have heard loud and clear is that it is very difficult for people when we are moving through kind of the transition and understanding where they can go and where they can be. So shelter is something that when a person is experiencing a trauma like homelessness, that creates stability. And so I am grateful for the partners that stand in that space and that are willing to support us. You'll find that for the administration and for me personally, collaboration is the only way that we are going to be able to genuinely create long-term and co-create solutions that don't just exist in the short term And again, maintaining that focus on long-term efforts and supports through collaboration interdepartmentally with our assembly members as well as cross-sector partners, because the solution is bigger than just what we can do as a municipality. It requires our business community, private partnerships, foundations, everyday community members that are experiencing the impact of individuals that are unhoused. And so we are open to all of those conversations and navigating those challenges together. We have 3 major goals over the next few months, and that includes addressing significant public safety concerns. We recognize that abatement is not a singular solution when we think about public safety concerns that stem from encampments, but we are addressing those through the abatement process in collaboration with our partners at the coalition and other community partners as much as possible, and when possible, to move individuals from encampments into permanent supportive housing. Abatement remains a tool, but the long-term solution is to ensure that we have shelter in place and shelter available. I also want to acknowledge that when we're talking about individuals that are experiencing homelessness, that there are often 2 types of individuals that are experiencing. It's those that need access to resources and support. And then there are some individuals that see themselves as long-term campers, and they are going to avail themselves of services, but they're not looking for shelter. And then you also have some individuals within those encampments that are really creating and causing problems and where the criminal activity exists. That is a public safety solution in partnership with APD. For the other individuals that need linkage to service, that's where we rely on our outreach partners for that. Homelessness is challenging, and we are looking for all solutions, but we also want to be as open and as committed as possible to public safety and ensuring that when and where we can use abatement as a tool in collaboration with outreach, as well as having APD and our partners to address when there's criminal activity. The second goal over the next few months, of course, is going to be to implement a shelter plan ahead of winter. Right now, we estimate that there's going to be 400 to 500 people that will be unhoused. And so the use of non-congregate shelter is going to be incredibly important. I'm grateful to the coalition for being such a close partner with data to ensure that we recognize what the need is going to be. I do want to point out that while the visibility of homelessness often takes our attention to the immediate, last year at this time, we were looking at the need for around 900 beds. So there's been significant progress that's been made over time, and we hope to continue that momentum. The third goal is to develop a dependable and predictable year-round shelter plan and address housing. That will take into account the multiple different plans that have been put in place so that we are operating and that there's a level of coordination. We're not interested in creating a whole new plan out of thin air, but what are some of those key themes and frameworks that already exist that we can move forward? We've already started this work so that it really helps to ensure that we're in a different place next year. I do want to circle around on abatement. Abatement is something that there has been an existing process, and I'm really happy to be able to come in and partner with Parks and Recs, APD, the CAP team, Health Department, Coalition, and others to ensure that, again, it's not a singular tool, but it's something that's critically important to ensure the safety of our community as a whole. I'll pause if Mike wants to talk a bit about abatement and what we've done.
A recap?
And actually, let me pause you just for a second.
Sure.
I do have a question from a member Brawley. Do you want to jump in at this point?
Yeah, thanks. And I'll raise a couple questions that I think we can keep talking about. One is, have you all started thinking about, in addition to shelter, I appreciate that, that look is the kind of warming center or services in addition. So that's one question, because I know that's a really important service. I know the city has provided it in different ways over the years. And I also know that can be a source of basically site management problems. So also acknowledging that. That's one question. The other question is, again, something to keep working on, but in terms of funding, so we have our $4 million for the state that is specific to that one shelter. We have some money in the budget, but a lot of the ways that we paid for shelter the last couple of years was really one-time emergency funding, as you know. And so, and really federal funding that we had access to. So just if you have initial thoughts on that as well, but acknowledging those are both questions that need to be answered later as well.
Through the chair, Member Brawley, thank you for the question. Warming centers. We are looking for a diversity of solutions for individuals this winter, and that absolutely includes warming center, and that'll be a part of the larger plan. Funding is always a critical question in how vast and broad and how creative we can be in solutioning. And so right now, funding is something that I'm continuing to work with the administration on to understand what will be needed. And so we'll have more information later on that. Mhm.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Mike Braniff, Parks and Recreation. I'd like to give just a recap of the cleaning and abatement work that the Healthy Spaces team has been involved in, really since the last time that the committee got together. And so the team is cleaning in all affected areas. They really work in two ways: cleaning generally every day in areas that are affected, where persons experiencing homelessness spend time. And so this is both on the streets and in the camps. And even in the camps that we're not abating, the team is visiting and cleaning. And so that's part one. And then the other, we've had 4 abatements either posted or completed since we last met. And the first is at Elderberry or Hannah's Cove on the Coastal Trail. And this was, of course, in conjunction with the coalition to abate directly into housing, which was successful. And well, I don't need to speak to the outcomes. I think they're better outcomes, but it also makes the cleaning work awfully easy when we arrive and the camp is already clear, or when the team arrives. We have posted and completed an abatement at Fairview Lions Park in Fairview. And we've also posted an abatement, and we are in the middle of cleaning at 15th and A, or Johnny Ellis Rainbow Bridge, or Central Lutheran. People kind of refer to it by a number of different landmarks. Both of these areas were prioritized on a number of data points, in particular, the proximity to schools, and with consideration of the start of school, just where we're at in the calendar. And then yesterday we posted at 33rd and Fairbanks Street, more or less 33rd, 32nd, Eagle Street, the right-of-way. This is the second time we've posted right-of-way this summer to address vehicles. These are largely the same vehicles that had moved up from 40th and Fairbanks Street. So that's a recap of what the group has been up to since the last meeting, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Mr. Zoll.
So I have a myriad of questions, and feel free to ask them again. But is there a schedule for abatement? And then is there a time to abate? So sometimes we do 72 hours, sometimes we do 14 days. And also recognize that you're not the only ones that do abatement. I believe APD does as well. Is there a plan to get away from, like we saw at the 40th Street camp, where we abated it, they moved half a mile away and started another camp to prevent that scenario from proliferating? And the last one is, it doesn't seem like we used a health and safety reason to abate, or it takes us time to get to that point. And if you can explain that. So happy to repeat any of those.
Okay, I'll take a stab at both of them. And if Farina grabs the microphone, then my answer is not hitting the mark. I think in the case of the first, when it comes to vehicles in the right-of-way and the 2 abatements, I think that the answer generally is to try and find a better solution for where people can park that are using vehicles as shelter, that are living in vehicles. And that's something that we're working on. We don't have something that we're yet ready to unveil, but it's top of mind, and yeah, we're working on it. I think that, straighten me out if I steer away from the intent of your question, but I think when it really comes to looking at the health and safety components and then how we prioritize, what data we reference when we decide what we're going to abate. I think really the challenge is a capacity issue, and just how much work can the team do, the lead times that go into the abatements, and just overall worker power in terms of people and vehicles. I think that at points throughout the summer, we've identified at least 8 camps that are on our radar as a group that we would like to address. The challenge is, again, with capacity, that we end up addressing them one at a time, and we just have to work through the list. So.
But you did a good job. And I'll address the question around abating and then individuals just moving to another location. When we have the opportunity to partner with, for example, the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness on abating from an encampment into permanent supportive housing, those are always the best options. However, we know that there's a dearth of housing. So ensuring that we actually have places when folks are providing resources that someone can actually go. And that is a challenge that we have right now. I think it's very transparent to the entire community that we lack the resources to support everyone in the way that they need support. And so a huge part of what we're doing in creating these plans is ensuring that we have kind of a continuum, so that includes warming shelters for individuals that aren't interested in being on the inside, recognizing that we have individuals that are camping, that they're sleeping in their vehicles. And then how do we address that? We don't have a hard solution right now, but it is absolutely in the co-creation of what we're doing with our community partners and internally, and then recognizing, budget. How do we ensure that we can fund all of these solutions? Abatement is difficult for the individuals that's camping, but it's also difficult for the neighborhood, the businesses, and the individuals that are next to those camps. When there's a solution like this camp is not engaged in criminal activity, but there's a lot of trash, that's where we can partner with Parks and Rec and go in and do routine cleanup. But once there's an escalation and there's an impact on the community, we really want to be as thoughtful as possible about going in and providing resources and abating the camp. And I didn't track if we missed a question.
No, I think you did pretty good. To me, I think one of the difficult components is homelessness is not a crime, but crime is a crime. So when that criminal elements enters into a camp, how do we pull that out, and how do we deal with that once and finally? Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of other people in the queue, Ms. Brawley and then Ms. Bronga.
Thanks. And I appreciate the answers, but also I know there are a lot of folks in the community who are frustrated because they feel like the answer is, we're not ready yet, or we're not coming yet, or and I think it's important to acknowledge multiple things are true, right? That as you said, camps have an impact on the people around them, the businesses around them. Moving people also has an impact on the people who are moved, right? And then that is not a solution. So I appreciate that you said those things, and it is hard. And I think I just want to reflect a lot of what we're hearing, I think, across the spectrum. It is everything from an individual or a few individuals moved into my area, please deal with that immediately and move them. And then we're hearing that from every district in the city. And also, as you said, abatement harms people, and it can be a big step backwards as well. And so I think, so I guess my request, and I know you guys are already thinking about this, but just to really emphasize it is, I think we need to have a better story to share with the public. And I mean, everyone in the public. And I know this is impossible. It's an impossible thing to balance. But also I think we need to figure out how to have honest conversations with the community about expectations, about what these issues are. Because I think it is not reasonable to just say we want people to not exist. And that is not where I'm coming from. However, it is also not reasonable to say this is a large social issue or a large societal issue that we have no control over, right? So I'm putting these things on the record knowing there isn't quite an answer right now, but I do want to emphasize that we need to come up with a better message or better answers soon as we continue to work on the actual policy solutions, because I hear a lot of frustration across the board, even from folks who are coming from a place of compassion. So I don't know if you have an initial response now, but I really just wanted to put those on the record because I think the frustration is escalating out in the community. Thanks.
Through the chair, Member Brawley, I don't have an answer for that. All I can do is recognize what you've said. Those elements are all true, that we can hold multiple positions, and we will come back and have a better answer and a better story.
Thanks, Ms. Braga.
Thanks. I echo what Member Salt spoke about. The criminal activity is what the people that are the most compassionate in my area that reach out to me. It's like, why are they being allowed to do this? I was asked to come and look at a motorhome that's been parked on East 32nd by Lee Street with out-of-date tags that the CAP team said we had not seen him actually drive, so therefore he could stay there, and he's not breaking the law because he's not driving. And there's all these things that, like, anyone else who was driving around or had a vehicle with unregistered tags sitting in the right-of-way that had owned a home would be held accountable. They would be towing. So there's some of that where people feel like there's this two different rules that are applying. I am hearing what Ms. Brawley says about people have a right to exist, but a lot of the existing is happening on prime real estate areas that we value greatly. And I heard you say that you're working on places to park or camp. I applaud that. I think people would love to see that here is a place, but not here. Another thing that comes to mind is users groups like farmers markets, Arctic Orienteering Club. If they are charged a fee to use a space that is difficult for them to use because of people in the parks living in tents and whatnot, then maybe we need to do away with user fees until we get a handle. If some people are allowed to live at a park with no charge, then why should a farmer's market pay? And I'm rolling around my head with thinking, I think we need to figure that out.
Through the chair, Member Braga, I appreciate the comments completely. I don't want to speak for law enforcement. I understand that there's just a number of, it's way outside of my depth to speak to what happens. I know that APD has been a really good partner as we talk about the abatement process and how we move forward. And so I want to express my gratitude for the CAP team and the partnership there. And then I would let APD speak for how their enforcement works. You also mentioned kind of the impact for farmers markets and fees. Again, that would be something that I'm happy to take back to the administration. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't see, I'm going to put myself in the queue just for a moment. The comment I made earlier about conversation earlier about and the whether it's the alcohol tax plan that we've developed or the many plans we've been talking about. But, I hope to get to a place where we don't not allow creative ideas to come. I mean, there's lots of ideas. There's, designated camping, day areas for people to go. We've talked about year-round shelters. We've talked about small houses. We've talked about all kinds of things that are, but I think it's really important to recognize that there's not one thing. But I do really strongly feel like that the sooner we can come with some specific priorities and specific plans and some timelines, I think that'll really help at least us figure out how to support that and how to really put energy. And this committee will continue to entertain ideas. I think if the community wants to come forward and has creative ideas for how to solve things, we want to hear those things. We don't want to stop that. But at the same time, we want to not be sort of whack-a-moling. We want to set some really clear priorities, and we want to move forward with those. And so I appreciate the comments about cold weather shelter, about year-round shelter. We know those are priorities, and so I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for the folks, do you have anything else you want to add at this point before we close your section?
Through the chair, thank you. I appreciate your comments, and I fully recognize the need for more specificity when we talk about priorities. I will say a foundation for any and everything that we do moving forward is the existence of our congregate shelter, fully funding that, and the importance of our non-congregate shelter sites. We have 500 individuals that will be absolutely in need of somewhere to go. And so when you're asking for something concrete, those are the two things that create the safety net that you will see and hear me consistently speak to, and that will be priority in our plans. We, in partnership with the health department, look to have those services activated by October 15th. So there is a very specific timeline. In closing, I want to leave people with a feeling that we're not just being optimistic for the sake of being optimistic. In the very short 3 weeks that I have been onboarded, there is a level of collaboration and partnership interdepartmentally, and people that are reaching out from the community who are frustrated but want to provide solutions and answers, that are asking, how do we partner? How do we engage? And that is absolutely something that we should be talking about. Recognizing the data points that the coalition talked about, the number of outflow that we're seeing in our system. These things, sometimes data points don't feel good when I can walk out and I can see the impact in downtown, but it really does matter that there has been significant change. There's been 150 people housed into permanent supportive housing through the Next Step program, plus 30 people through from street encampment into permanent supportive housing. A reduction in, we're not looking for 900 beds this winter, we're looking for 500. That's still our neighbors that need somewhere to go, but there has been progress, and we continue to and have a commitment to maintain that progress. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And thank you for your time today. Okay, we're going to move on to our next item. Kim, would you like to come up? A report from the health department. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't see.
Thanks. I wanted to ask you, the 500, does that include the people that need to be housed from Golden Lion? Or is that an additional group on top of the 500?
Through the chair, Member Branca, I will come back to you on that. I don't want to misspeak.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Please share your name for the record, and you can begin with your update. Thanks.
Kimberly Rash, Acting Director for the Anchorage Health Department. All right, so in regards to budget, and as Ms. Brown had spoke about earlier with the $4 million, that $4 million is for the congregate site at East 56, which would include the operations, food service, rent, and utilities. Is what we can utilize that $4 million for. We do know that the rent amount may change moving forward, and that is to ensure that there is no negative impact on ratepayers. Utilities are stable at that location. And then moving forward, we do have the 3 RFPs, the 2 in particular for food service and congregate operator. Will really determine how much we are spending of that $4 million. We currently have, to date, have spent from January 1st to current $8.3 million on congregate, non-congregate food and third-party oversight. So that really encompasses all of the quote-unquote emergency sheltering to date. We do have, obviously, other funds that come out of alcohol tax. And at the last assembly meeting, I presented a very long document, and I understand it was very long. And really that laid out the unified funding, which comes out of that alcohol tax funding. And in that document, the 3rd and 4th page really showed how much had been spent in 23 and then how much had been spent so far in 24. And that was AIM 115-2024. And so we do have an additional RFP out currently for the modular units. And so that process right now is in negotiation phase, and that is for an operator. for the modular units, and that already has funding set aside of $500,000.
Can you pause? Can you update us on that? What, for those that may have not been paying attention, what are the modular units and what is the plan there?
Yes. So believe it was AR 2023-440 as amended, asked for the Anchorage Health Department to go out and competitively procure an operator for a modular unit used for transitional housing and set aside those funds. Those funds were then rolled over into 2024. In the summer, I believe, of 2024, the assembly and the administration came forth and changed some code so that modular units would be an allowable use. And so right now the health department had put out the RFP, it has closed, and then we are currently in the negotiation phase with a potential operator of that. And so hopefully we'll be able to present that to the assembly here shortly for that. Yeah. And then the last bit of funding that is a part of the overall emergency cold weather sheltering plan is the United Way with Pay for Success Home for Good. They continue to utilize their funds. Their funds end this year. So we've had a multi-year contract with them. And so really looking at that alcohol strategic plan and seeing how we want to move forward as a community, especially given, their continued success with that program. Knowing that we have the $4 million and kind of backing up, and my apologies on that, we are estimating that from August 1st to the end of the year, we will be utilizing $2.8 million for the shelter operations, food service, the facilities costs, and then the third-party oversight. And so that is just an estimate that we're guessing right now because we don't know what those RFPs will come back at. But all other entities are utilizing their funds, throughout the various buckets that are appropriated to the health department for our community.
Do we have any questions? Nope. Okay. Just one. You're the $4 million. You're giving us sort of a general range. Do you have a sense of how long that will last us? I mean, you gave us a little bit of a sense of that, but at what point? We're in budget season beginning now, so. But can you give us a sense of what your estimates are in terms of what that will cover?
Yeah, great question. So the $4 million, based on just estimates, I believe would take us through February of 2025. We do have, and I was remiss to say this earlier, we do have the additional $756,000 that the Assembly had appropriated to the Health Department for emergency cold weather sheltering. So that will, add on another month or so, getting us probably until March. But then working with the administration through our budget process, we'll need to figure out, what the funding looks like to get us to the end of April, if not moving through the summertime of next year. And sorry, one last thing too. Yeah. We do have the current lease that was approved. And so we do have that facility until October of 2025. And so I will be asking for a lease extension past October 15th of this year per that last agreement that we just signed.
Great. And I know there's a previous question about the Golden Lion and how that factored into the numbers around cold weather shelter. Do you have any information you can add to that in terms of what you came in and presented previously at a different meeting on that? Yeah. What is the current estimation as it relates to winter and the residents of that facility?
Yeah, great question. So we have a little over 100 residents currently at the Golden Lion. I do not believe that they were factored into the amount, but I know that Farina will, get that concrete answer. But we do need to work with our community partners to ensure that those individuals do not end up unsheltered. And so really looking at a comprehensive decompression plan, which means making sure that individuals that are residing at the Golden Line have somewhere to go. And have the supportive services to make that transition because, we've all moved either, renting or owning a home. And it's quite a transition to pack up your belongings, find transportation to move your belongings from one place to another. And so really looking at what does that plan look like? We are going to have to engage our community partners pretty heavily. And so we're working through that process currently.
I don't see any additional questions. Thank you so much for being here today. We really, really, really appreciate it. And I am going to hand over the chair to my co-chair to manage the public comment section of our meeting. I know we have a number of folks who are here to speak, and we want to make sure we have time for them. So I'm going to hand over the gavel to Mr. Salt and have you manage that process.
All right, thank you. So I have a list of people that have said they want to speak. So if you could raise your hand, let's get a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So about 8. We may not get to everyone. We have about a half hour. And I would make the request and you don't have to follow it, but if you've spoken before, allow others that have not spoken to get up and say their piece. So I guess we'll form a line.
Is it in accordance with our Bible, or is a line that is forming at this moment?
Well, since we have 8, I would say let's form a line of who wants to speak so we can have people line up. So we'll have our first speaker come up. And then just state your name for the record. And you press the button till the light turns green.
We have a timeout for a second. Can you read so that they are prioritized?
Yeah, the list I have is Lori Mapes, Carrie, forgive me, I'm butchering these, Zhao Downey, Matthew Jean, Gerald Cronin.
Okay, can
Okay.
I read the list so that everybody knows? Lori Mapes is the first one. Second one is Carrie from the dance studio. Third one is Matthew. Fourth one is Susie Hang, and I don't believe she's here. Fifth one is Gerald. You'll ask her walk, Jim.
Yeah, no, I thanks for the prioritization. Again, we don't have to follow it, but it'd be nice if we civilized and did. I think we have plenty of time. So we'll have our first speaker come up.
Right here, or
You want to sit down over there, press the button till you get the light green, and then state your name, and we'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Lori Mapes. I am the fortunate or unfortunate owner of 3300 Fairbanks, the old DMV building. We bought that a year and a half ago and spent the last year renovating and moved in 4 months ago. I would do it again. We love the area. It's business minded. And this past 2.5 weeks has showed me that my fellow business people over there will mobilize when they have to, and they'll mobilize quickly and they'll support each other. It has been ugly for 2.5 weeks, as you all know. And I'll speak for myself, we do not feel supported by the administration. August 2nd, Friday at work, I looked out the window and finally all the cars were off 33rd. I was like, great. There were only a few before that. We were dealing with the flow of people back and forth. Saturday morning, I went into work and all of a sudden there's this lineup and it was like, crap, 40th is now in our yard. Everybody wondered what was going to happen. Were they going to show up? And I will tell you, I have cameras on my building. Fortunately, my builder did a really great job getting us good security on our building when we built it. We thought it's J-Bear security. We have around our building, our locks, spent a ton of money on it. And now I was like, okay, now it's worth it, because the second day we opened our office, Within 1 minute, we had people in our lobby laying down on the floor. I got mostly women there. We all had our bear spray and we chased them out. Immediately, we were able to recode our system to go on a 24-hour lockdown, which we will stay on forever now because we have to, because it's not safe. I have cameras that videotape live all the sides of my office of stuff going on, and it is criminal. And like you said, homelessness is not a crime, but crime is a crime. And if we don't address crime, we are not ever going to get through this. And Farina, where are you? 3,000 homeless? Is that what you said we have now?
Yes.
Okay. What percentage per capita is that for our city? I don't have that. I can pretty much tell you. It's like almost 1,000 per capita, per 100,000 capita, which is twice as much as the highest cities in the lower 48. So we have this huge problem. And if we don't address the crime, and APD is trying, we see them over there, but they're not getting the support they need to do the stuff they need to do. We have drugs. I had chased 2 drug dealers off one of my porches this morning, last night, and I have it on film. 5 guys out there with all their paraphernalia doing all the stuff they do illegally. How can I run a business, keep my staff safe, keep the public safe, keep the property safe? My time's up, but that's what we're dealing with. So I think what we need to really consider is the impact on business. We can't afford this in our businesses. And we've hired security. The costs are racking up super high.
Great.
We're going to lose
Thank you.
our
Thank you,
people.
Ms. Mapes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm passionate.
Yeah. Next speaker.
Am I here? Is this where? Oh, sorry. Couldn't see where she was sitting. Hello, my name is Carrie Zawadny, and I'm the Executive Director of Alaska Dance Theater. First, I'd like to thank you all for inviting this public comment. And I want to also say that myself, my staff, the community that surrounds Alaska Dance Theater is very appreciative of the good work that is happening in our community to make positive change. We understand this is a very complex issue, but really it is the criminal element that is causing a lot of trouble for us right now. Alaska Dance Theater sits at the corner of 33rd and Eagle Street. We are home to, depending on the time of year, 300 to 400 dance students. These students range in age from 18 months to adult, but the bulk of our students are school-aged children who just want to go to ballet class. And right now, their parents are afraid to send them to ballet class. And that's a ridiculous sentence to say, and I'm sorry that I have to do it. I'd like to really briefly just outline some of the impacts that we've been experiencing at ADT. The encampment directly threatens the well-being of children, staff, and community members, as well as the dance school's operations. Drug use, quite literally, in the middle of the street, is being witnessed by children, youth, parents, and staff regularly. Growing fear and anxiety among parents in the community erode trust in ADT's ability to provide a safe environment, and damages Alaska Dance Theater's reputation as a dance school for children and youth. The economic impacts that we're already feeling are slower enrollment at the dance school because it reflects these growing safety concerns. Property damage and health risks from drug paraphernalia are escalating. The discovery of needles on ADT property where young children attend classes underscores this immediate danger. Again, we are a school with 400 students. Discarded foil packets and burned soda cans, likely containing fentanyl or other opioid residue, along with lighters and scrap materials used for tourniquets, are found regularly on our lawns. Young women, mostly teens, drive themselves to and from class and often walk through the parking lot alone. Many of these same teens spend up to 20 hours a week at ADT, and it's currently not a safe environment for them. They can't walk to their cars without supervision. This is their second home, and it needs to be a safe one. Tampering with and damaging exterior electrical boxes is happening at our space. It poses a serious threat to students and staff. We have had fires deliberately and accidentally set across the street. Our painters extinguished one earlier this week. The approaching cold and darkness are only going to exacerbate this situation. Our hours of operation are often during the dark. I really urge more action. This is not an appropriate location to wait on policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you for allowing me here. I'm Matthew John from Korean Airlines. Korean Airlines have a long business with the Anchorage, more than 40 years. So now we have 3 empty blocks at the 33rd, and we also spend annually $8 million in airport-related activities. Now I see in front of my empty block, some tents and vehicles and motorhomes stay there, and at there they make some kind of wrong behavior and some offend some illegal activity to the business people and or the customers there. So I have big worries. They have some harsh activities and make some noise. Also, there are lots of trashes accumulate every day. So I would like to ask the city to clean up or to move them other place. I want to make my properties maintained safely. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for allowing us to speak to you. I just want to
And state your name for the
Oh,
record.
my name is Gerald Cronin. I'm one of the managers at the Alaska Rock Gym. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of the Alaska Dance Studio. We have also many children that come in to the gym. On this, I want to correct this. This says 288 children coming in. I just did a real quick count from August 1st through today. And total, we have 3,199 customer check-ins. That's just general. 807 children, 17 and younger. 528 children, 12 and younger. The 288 are kids that have regular recurring youth programs so they're coming in multiple times a week. So a large chunk of those children are enrolled in recurring youth programs, and so they have more opportunities to see criminal activity, but then also maybe interact with people. Just a few things that have been that has happened around the Alaska Rock Gym. Youth programs participant found a box of needles, human feces as well, right around the box of needles, and then it's also a danger to my staff. Part of my job is providing a safe work environment for the Alaska Rock Gym, and my closing staff, sometimes it's female staff. They now walk together to the closest vehicle to the building and then drive the other staff member to their vehicle because they don't feel safe just walking out into the parking lot. There's been multiple encounters within the building, and there's a real fear of not knowing how an encounter will go. Just a few days ago on Monday, there was an RV blocking our exit and a fire hydrant. And so I called APD and it was moved further down the street by Tuesday. So thank you. I just want to say thank you. That was really helpful. But that was a danger. Just blocking a fire hydrant. Last week, a janitor asked people shooting up drugs behind the building to leave, and they did. It's a danger to customers. Over the course of the last month, there have been customer complaints almost daily. Last Friday, there was a man following customers from their cars into the building, from the building to their cars, checking the door handles. He was asked to leave the building multiple times, asked to leave the parking lot multiple times, and it resulted in APD coming and talking with him. He was experiencing a mental health crisis. Last night, there's a customer reported that there was a man pooping behind the dumpster, and it's like, who cleans that up? You know, it's also just a general parking issue. There's never enough parking in the city, correct? But Moose's Tooth and ARG, we share parking. It's a big tourist attraction. We just don't have enough parking as it is, and it's just a practical problem as well as a safety issue. And customers try to use the street parking, but it's not available. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And again, state your name for the record.
Yes. I'm Karen Barnard. I'm a longtime resident of Anchorage, and I'm here to report on some very disturbing things regarding becoming homeless. I am now homeless. I was a rent paying, current with my rent, and I complained about ice and snow in the parking lot. I fell, I'm injured. We have a mouse infestation. We've had bugs. The landlord is blaming me because he didn't catch the tenants that did cause it. So he's retaliated against all my reports to HUD, to the courts, to the health department. Health department opened a case on my data. I'm a good diagnostic engineer, so I sent pictures of what was going on. Lack of inspectors has started reporting in April. Lack of inspectors. I still hadn't seen anybody by June 1st. I called, I got a letter, beautiful letter, pow, from the health department. They're short of staff. They're ripping their hair out and very, professional, but that didn't help me because the response to that letter and my complaints, because I told the landlord I was complaining to the city back in April, hoping he would get going, was eviction. It's retaliation. I am now going to lose my entire apartment. I'm waiting for a stay of execution any minute. I've asked the court, district court is the homeless generator. There is no supervision. They just listen to you because that's your right to be heard. Ignore it. I got the case log. I'll considered everything and disregarded eviction. And so I'm being illegally evicted, losing all my stuff and no help every time I come to the city. Not my job. The letter, it was great. It said he had responsibility and he can recover from the tenants that caused it, which was an apartment who had vacated last fall. So my apartment was the last apartment to get invaded. It's been invaded, the whole complex, 27 apartments are in danger. And he's threatened me over and over again. Nothing's happened. I'm homeless. I had surgery. I cannot go to the solid waste system. I am going to be sleeping in my car recovering from surgery while I wait for a stay of execution. But legally, they can throw out all my stuff today. Pretty horrendous. And all I get is, not my job, not my job. I reported it. There's the Alaska Wildlife Troopers. They're supposed to fix it. It shifted to APD. Oh, not our job. So there is a defect in the law. APD is not following the law.
Thank you.
Thank you. Get supervising that district court, homeless generator. It is our job because we're seeing the effects. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Miss Sophia O'Neill, and I am a resident of Eagle River. First and foremost, I want to make a quick statement that to be poor does not mean criminal, and to be homeless does not mean criminal. There is criminality within the element, yes, and there are people out there that need help. Oh no. Okay, I'll be speaking quickly. I hope I narrate this as best as possible. They, them, all is what you hear much too often. Circumstances are just that, circumstances. Another judges, that is called perspective, generated within them, perhaps nothing to do with facts. When the world sees a situation, they disdain. Too few bother to break down the problem. For example, why do the homeless live in camps? For some, belief in the safety of the group, sharing something in common, feeling less judgment. For others, it is the ease of the proximity of resources and not just drugs, walkability. For others, they eke a living, providing resources for the elderly or less mobile. All you have to do is research on Stockdale, the psychology and acceptance of circumstances when you don't have the ability or power to change them. It will grant considerable insight. Also, to not trust or learning not to trust due to being let down. People learn, while one learns, it's better not to trust those that do offer help. Help them will give up and will say they want to live like that. The truth, there is a power otherwise denied them. So by turning away from those offering conditional help, this act empowers the otherwise powerless. So what's to be done for the difficult, the forgotten, and the powerless? Judge not. If you knew their stories, could you live through it? In camps, there are the ill. They have someone they simply depend on in the throes of addiction or mental illness. So they are there by relational or basic need. Some are victims being used for their circumstances and their resources. Contemplate, do such people deserve public complacency or unwillingness to face facts, where you choose to embrace rather stereotypes? Who's to save these examples that I give? Where it isn't a choice. It's actually, there is no other choice for some of these people. Who are you to judge, turn away, and using such limited information to make decisions? Will you turn from a person suffering from abject poverty? Label them as criminal because they live in such a way? Criminalize the person who performs criminal acts. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Ron Oliva, adjacent property owner of Brother Francis Shelter. I don't think anyone's appeared as many times as me. And if you all receive my emails and documentation, only one of you have answered. So the Parks and Rec guy was here with his abatement schedule. I've asked for abatement on Carlick Street and the hillside down from the Lucky Wishbone. As it continues to grow, the violence, the fire, the drugs. I've been personally assaulted with a knife. My business is failing. My health is failing. And unfortunately, the city in addressing the problem is also failing. So I'm very concerned because this is my last year. I'm 73, drain my resources. I have a difficult time with paying the second half of my taxes. Any calls to the police, I commend them. They do respond. You have to be patient. They have priorities. I sent a letter to the editor thanking them. You have to be patient. They have priorities. But more importantly is you have Beans, formerly Beans Cafe, which is the navigation center, isn't even open on weekends, and it closes at 4 o'clock. I don't think spending that kind of money and not having it open is a good idea. Brother Francis Shelter's capacity is 240. They're at 120. And when they initially got their conditional use for being in a heavy industrial area, on a truck route, on a inclined hill with no crosswalks, part of it was they had a map of 2,500 feet around that facility to pick up all the garbage. Ask them for their log and see what kind of performance they do. And you just gave them not only the 2.2 million, you gave them another 275,000. And Beans, when they give out meals, they give it out with paper plates and forks. Why don't they give them a trash bag to put that into? All the garbage, 22 to 27 tons a year, I picked up and disposed of. And that was with Jim O'Neill, Brown Jug. My request is for you to buy my properties as promised because they're condemned by the environment you created. The other thing is, I'd like to have 10 minutes of presentation how that land can be converted into a training center for the homeless and make those people productive members of society. Do you have any questions?
No. Thank you, Ron.
Did you enjoy my Mark Twain quote?
Any other speakers? Yeah, we have time for two more. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Kenny Peterson from Midtown. We have a business 3 blocks away. I just want to say thank you. I heard from our Parks and Rec that the areas that were addressed this morning that's being abated, that was posted yesterday. So thank you for responding to 33rd. I just want to thank you for that. Second, I just thought we'd take a breath for a moment. I just want to say thank you again. That's what my testimony was last time. I see the changes. We see the effect on folks. A month ago, when the Anchored Home Plan was before the Assembly, there was a conversation brought up by Ms. Karen Branga about what can we do besides just housing and what can we do for independence and helping jobs and so on. And it was mentioned by several that maybe we can do it in another forum. This is a good forum for that. I was at 15th and A on Tuesday. They were abated last Friday and they were leaving that day, so I thought I'd check in per request there. I was looking for an individual. He wasn't there, but I talked to another gal. She was sitting there. She was not, but her name is Molly. And I said, Molly, you have to leave. Help. And she looked at me. She says, I'd like a job. I says, I want you to have a job. I just heard it at the Assembly just a month ago. And she told me everything that she could do. She knows Microsoft. She has certifications. She knows accounting. And she gave me some cards that she created for her husband. She knows how to do magnet cards and so on. So if anyone needs magnet cards, Molly would like a job. Then on Sunday, I was at Holiday, and John, who was on Fairbank Street, we helped him get a battery and a fuel pump so he can move his vehicle that day. He saw me. He says, I know you. And he says, I could use a job. And I says, well, what do you need next? He says, I could use a SIM card for my phone so I could see about getting a job. I says, how much? He said, $60. I said, $60. I have some trash bags. Would you like to be part of our immediately just created city beautification team? And with those trash bags, would you pick up 3 hours worth of trash? And I can give you $60 for your SIM card to help you on your way. And so I would like to invite this group to maybe pass a resolution, maybe use some of the funding from workforce development that might be coming back from other sources, and maybe do a work team. And I'd love to be part of it to help these folks find jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last speaker.
Oh.
No, let's let the speaker that's here speak. Thank you.
All right. Hello. Jamie Lopez, East Anchorage, formerly worked for the Coalition, formerly was homeless, managed to get out of it. I can tell you this much, there aren't many people with lived experience in this room. Not everybody gets out of it very easy without a helping hand. There's a poverty trap, and it's very, very difficult to get beyond it. So what's happened in the past month? You've had 3 abatements. They were discussed by Mr. Braniff. And one of them, was over at by Central Lutheran. And you're probably not on the right side of history if you are pushing people out forcibly from an area while they're seeking refuge and sanctuary right outside a church. It's not a good look. A lot of people, they don't fall into this. Well, some fall into it by accident. There's more than 2 classes of homeless. There's 4: mental illness, substance abuse. People fall into it for any number of reasons: financial, medical, series of events, dominoes that happen. forth people who either want to be homeless or have been failed by so many different people that, they have PTSD. It's either conscious, unconscious. Over a period of time, it can be one of those things. It can be all four of those things, but it's a little bit more nuanced. And so, basically what I'd like to say is you can do better. And the unfortunate fact about this is, you have with your anchored home plan and also with emergency shelter, last year you had 200 beds over at CWS. And, put it this way, there could be nothing more disparaging than basically putting poor people in a shelter, which used to be used for trash, but it's what's available. So if you're dealing with the psychological aspects of that, and the beds are right next together and people steal and all that, that's not a good look. Then you also had Aviator and Alex Hotel, 274 double occupancy rooms. So you're already up to 474 beds. And then you have 80 currently over at Tudor Rescue Mission. Then you have various shelters, Weather at Awake and Brother Francis. But I can tell you this much, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people outside all over Anchorage, and you cannot house them. And so while you may have a long-term housing plan that you're looking for maybe 2 years or 5 years or even 10 years to try and build the amount of housing that you need, you have to keep people alive long enough to get the housing. And nobody seems to have a plan for that. I left Coalition. I made about 12 grand there working 3 months. And I took that money and I used that money and I tried to keep people alive last winter. And I was taking food, tent to tent to tent, and going RV to RV. And nobody's perfect. And there are things you can do. You can supply trash bags. People need IDs. They need birth certificates. And I can tell you that right now, most of the people that are out there are focusing on those that they get housed and giving case management to those they're getting housed, but not the ones that are out there because people don't go beyond the parking lot to meet the people. Most of them don't. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Before we adjourn, I'll just say for the testimony we didn't hear, you can also email that testimony to us. So thank you. We're adjourned.